The hero shooter Concord, made by PlayStation's Firewalk Studios, is having its servers shut down on September 6th, and the game is getting pulled from digital storefronts, with refunds included for all owners of the game, according to PlayStation blog. While many qualities of the experience resonated with players, we also recognize that other aspects of the games in our initial launch didn't land the way we'd intended. Therefore, at this time, we have decided to take the game offline beginning September 6, 2024, and explore options including those that will better reach our players, said Ryan Ellis, game director of Firewalk Studios. This makes sense given that GameDiscover.co estimates that the game had only sold about 25,000 units, with 15,000 on PlayStation and about 10,000 on Steam, and the Steam player count never even passed 697 concurrent players. By all means, this game was just a massive failure, and given the blog post, it appears that PlayStation and the development team have decided to pivot. Whether that means Concord will be lost media or be reworked into something else, that remains to be seen, but what is certain is that the game was made competently enough, but there was seemingly no audience for it, at least not one big enough to support the large cost of production and lengthy development time. What does this mean? Please keep in mind what I put at this point is solely my opinion, my understanding of what transpired for a game I had no intention of playing, that I didn't buy, and I have no real investment in. I genuinely want the best for the developers, and I hope they can have a long, joyous, and fruitful career. However, what this feels like is that Sony, and by proxy their investors, were really wanting a slew of new live service games to come out and make the maximum amount of profit possible. They don't see this game as a passion project that was worked on for 8 years by a group of talented individuals. To many gamers, Concord symbolizes this mentality that is killing the games industry. The mentality that says, I don't care how many studios die, how many people get fired, we want games that can extract the most cash out of our customers while keeping them engaged. It's the same mentality that asks, why can't we compete with Fortnite, without ever engaging with what it was that exactly made Fortnite into the massive success we have seen over the past 7 years. It feels like they never for a second thought of what the repercussions of a failure at this level could be like, and what that would look like for all stakeholders involved, not just investors, but developers and customers as well. I think Sony did do the right thing by giving everyone refunds. For all intents and purposes, the game dies on Friday, while another PlayStation exclusive, Astrobot, launches on PS5. A game by all means should not have the hype around it that it does. A game that's a 3D platformer, a genre that PlayStation has a storied history with, thanks to the like of Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter, and Sly Cooper, as well as Crash and Spyro and other games that came before. But since the genre's inception, it's been largely dominated by Nintendo, as they have Mario, the most iconic video game character of all time. To many gamers, Astrobot represents the old guard that is single-player video games. He's a mascot platformer in the year 2024. The entire game is filled to the brim with nostalgia for PlayStation's legacy. You can't go far in the game without there being representation for nearly all part of PlayStation's history. Everything from God of War to Viv Ribbon is here. Luckily for Sony and Team Asobi, they made the decision to put Astro's Playroom on every PS5 and gave every console owner an opportunity to engage with not just Astrobot, but PlayStation's legacy as a whole. It may be one of the greatest pieces of marketing ever done by a video game company. Everything in Astrobot comes off as truly genuine. Nobody is making references to Wild Arms in 2024 for the big bucks. They're doing it out of love, and from what we can tell, a lot of those developers have been at the company a while. People from the original Ape Escape team are making this game, and it harkens back to PlayStation of old. Sure, it's been modernized over the year, but at PlayStation you could always count on their studios to be hard at work, making another game you probably want to play. Just look at the resume from Insomniac Games, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, and Guerrilla Games. They have cultivated an audience for AAA single-player titles. Even if you wouldn't go back and consider the earlier work AAA at the time, they were games that sold well enough to enter the gaming zeitgeist and have cachet amongst gamers in their everyday conversations. All large companies in the gaming space have this. So many people my age talk about how they loved playing Modern Warfare 2 growing up. People to this day talk about the earlier Halo games as if they are created by God themselves. I have found this online and in real life with so many PlayStation titles. There is an active Ratchet & Clank community, and there is an active Sly Cooper community. As small as it may be, I have a video about Ratchet & Clank that has over 260,000 views on YouTube, and a TikTok about Sly Cooper with over 230,000 views. People still talk and care about these games, so a love letter to every single one means a lot to PlayStation's core audience. Unfortunately for Sony, what doesn't matter to their core audience is live service games. And I'm not saying that there can't or there won't ever be any, and that there isn't a market for it. There most certainly is to one degree or another. But at the end of the day, Concord isn't welcomed by its core consumer. Nobody of significance is going out there to really talk about how much they loved Concord. Instead, the typical recurring PlayStation consumer rejected the game, and it did not do anywhere near enough work to get other players interested. Sure, people could have played the open beta, but at the end of the day, it did nothing to win over consumers. People were not going to drop Destiny 2, Overwatch, Apex Legends, Valorant, or even Call of Duty for this game. From the jump, so many people in this space thought this game was dead on arrival, and to be honest, they were entirely correct. It didn't even last 14 days. When I look at this game as a product, your target market doesn't specify anywhere else but just men ages 18 to 35 who play a first-person shooter. It doesn't do much to sell it. The game's mechanics or art direction do nothing to pull people away from those other existing player bases. There just is not a selling point for many consumers when it comes to Concord. Sure, the fidelity is high visually in this game, but there is nothing about these characters or this world that I want to spend hours upon hours looking at. I don't have that visceral experience I have when I go and play a Star Wars game and get to nerd out about every ship and droid that is around. Granted, I think you can make that critique about a lot of games, but those were able to sell more units, and many of them were actually profitable. Sony now has to deal with the consequences since they bought the studio. What those look like at the moment, we're not sure, but it definitely is not what they expected. This is what they get by purchasing studios they don't really take time to work with first. I know there are a lot of talented people who worked on this game. A development team is called a team for a reason though. You can have fantastic programmers, but if your story or art direction aren't on point, it's clear that the game won't sell. In football, you can have the best receiver in the league, but if you have a bad line or a bad quarterback, he's just not going to get the ball as much as he should. Having talented developers won't command success in the same way that having an all-star player won't fix a sports franchise. Just because there is talent doesn't mean they should have committed to the purchase. Even if everything else was the same, they could have published the game, but not bought the studio. It would have been easier to walk away from. Now they're responsible for the project and what happens to the team. To take this analogy further, they bought the team before ever watching them play, and boy did they get blown out. We will all get to see how they respond, but perhaps they should be more cautious in making such a big acquisition in the future.